So I was recently reminded of the film Small Soldiers from the announcement of the US 4K Steelbook release coming soon, and I hadn't seen it since I was young and decided to check it out for some nostalgia reasons, and I was surprised to see that it still really holds up. Now, everyone my age and a few years before grew up on this movie. Every guy I know has some nostalgia for this movie, because it's just perfect to a little boy generally. Now obviously girls can like this too, I just mean in the general stereotypical sense, and this has been my experience. And for a young lad, action figures coming to life and going to war with each other is a golden concept. This isn't Toy Story, there's no cowboys or space rangers, these are alien warriors and soldiers. And yes, again, before anyone jumps down my throat, I know the Gorgonites are a peaceful race, they aren't exactly warriors, but look at my man Archer, and the only reason he isn't beasting on Chip at every chance is because the company programmed him not to. But anyway, the film is directed by Joe Dante, famous director of Gremlins, Piranha and The Howling, and from that knowledge a lot of the movie starts to make sense, not only because of the Gremlins references littered throughout, like Erwin's password being Gizmo or there literally being a Gizmo in the dumpster, but by the way it's filmed, by the way the toys are animated, the violence that somehow works effortlessly next to childlike wonder. He's perfect for this movie. And the cast isn't exactly stacked, but it's filled with great actors like Tommy Lee Jones as the voice of Chip Hazard, we have Dennis Leary, Phil Hartman, David Cross, Frank Langella, Kevin Dunn, a very young Kirsten Dunst, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Christina Ricci, and even the leading Gregory Smith, one of the less notable names, is doing great as Alan. The idea is that this toy manufacturer puts these military AI chips in toys, which cause them to come alive, but due to their programming, the Commando Elite have orders to eradicate the Gorgonites. This starts a war in a little suburban town. Now, the movie runs on a fairly simple idea of subverting expectations. Chip Hazard and the Commandos are the soldiers, typically seen as the good guys, especially in the 90s because they're action heroes, whereas the Gorgonites look like monsters, they're unconventional, they look like barbarians, they're aliens, obviously the bad guys. But it's the opposite, the military guys are evil, trying to eradicate these primitive but passive and morally centered people that are just trying to find home. The film does a lot with the technology bad, military and government is evil stuff, like when Archer first flicks through Alan's computer, he sees images of Hiroshima and Watergate. The Commandos later on turn to taking hostages and killing civilians to complete their mission. Chip Hazard and his whole mission really reminds me of Quaritch and the US soldiers in Avatar. There's a lot of the same mindset and imagery, and there's this one wonderful scene of thematic mirroring where the Commandos are creating reinforcements with these dolls. It's a Dr. Frankenstein situation and it's presented as this horrific sci-fi horror scene, which then smash cuts to the Gorgonites watching Frankenstein and sympathizing with this so-called monster. Is it on the nose? Of course it is, but this is also in some capacity a kids film, and I think it communicates its message in an interesting way that is entirely visual. It's showing rather than telling. Also, this sequence starts with Chip Hazard taking apart a fallen soldier's head, which still feels so violent despite them being made of plastic. And on that topic, the designs of all the toys are so unique and interesting. Even the Commandos all look very individual and have their own aesthetic personalities. I love these designs, they just scratch a weird little itch I have in my brain, they're so pleasing to look at. And then getting to see how they did it all, I love seeing how the toys move, the mix between animation and animatronics and all the other effects that make these really fluid and incredibly lifelike characters. It's all incredibly impressive for 1998. And it feels like a movie magic that we don't get nearly as often anymore. Just a glimpse at the behind the scenes of this film shows you how much effort went into this movie. It just makes me sad that movies like this won't really exist ever again because no studio will take a chance on it, and even if they do, they won't have enough creative freedom to make it like they did here. There's clear inspiration from Toy Story and G.I. Joe, and in the latter's case, so much so that DreamWorks, Spielberg and Universal all face lawsuits over it, claiming they infringed on the copyright of a 1990 short film ode to G.I. Joe. The director of the short, Gregory P. Grant, claimed he had met with Amblin Entertainment, Spielberg's production company who helped produce Small Soldiers, to discuss a feature-length version of said short film. But after a month or so they passed on that project, but then they put what was then called Toy Soldiers into development. Seems fishy to me, if true. Also, when I was a kid, the scene of the dolls attacking Christy and Brad haunted me, and as an adult it is still a very well crafted sequence, and the hostage tape shown directly after is kind of hilarious, but in a cute and sincere way. The film balances its tone super well, and I think that's shown best through its use of music. This movie has an insane amount of great needle drops, but especially Wannabe by the Spice Girls during the big third act battle. It goes way harder than it should. It's just a testament to this film's humour and willingness to have fun with its admittedly goofy concept. And though the film is having fun, it is still very well made. Obviously the toys look great, but the lighting is amazing also, and it just made me think about the death of lighting in film and TV. I just wanted to point out that the entirety of the third act of this movie is shot and set during the night, and yet everything is visible. Characters' feelings and emotions are completely understood through the emotion of the lighting. And compare that to recent episodes of The Last of Us. This is an action scene of similar emotion, and what the hell is going on here? No, I'm not the type of person to say that lighting has died in film or that film is worse now than before, because I think that's always been a very awful take. Since you're responsible for what you consume, and if all you consume today is superhero movies, Netflix originals and big blockbusters, you're setting yourself up. Because many movies are still very well lit, very well made and shot, but my point is that Small Soldiers is a mainstream mid-budget family film. This was as accessible as a movie really got in 1998, and it still has the artistry that you can only really find in smaller passion projects in today's market, aside from those that are made by the greats. The film received a PG-13 rating in the US, which was a relatively new rating because of films in the past pushing the PG limits like Temple of Doom and famously Joe Dante's other works, Gremlins. Parents and critics were upset about what was depicted in these films, namely violence, and it felt it was too strong for the PG rating, but some of these films felt too tame to put an R rating or an NC-17, so they invented the middle ground, the PG-13. But despite that, Small Soldiers receiving a PG-13 rating wasn't without its own controversies. For a start, the studio wanted an edgy teen movie which definitely aims towards PG-13, but then Burger King hopped on as a sponsor for the movie and demanded it be moved to a PG rating since it could be more easily catered to young children, as they had reportedly spent $10 million on making 25 million toys to go into children's meals, but DreamWorks said they never promised a PG film, and the MPAA refused to budge due to a few scenes, namely one where the commandos drug Phil and Marion's gin and tonic. So then Burger King toys came with a warning, saying while toys are suitable for children of all ages, the movie Small Soldiers may contain material that is inappropriate for younger children. And while that appeased most, some parents still argued the toys were inappropriate still because of the bazookas and bows and arrows presented on some of them. As a result, reportedly, at least one store allowed parents to exchange the Small Soldiers toy for a Mr. Potato Head, and I just cannot imagine being that kid that got a Mr. Potato Head instead of a Gorgonite, but regardless, we move. Now what's even more interesting is that not only was the film rated higher than expected by Burger King, it was also forcefully cut and edited to get the film a lower rating than the initial R rating the studio were dreading, as the film included a lot more violence and action than what we actually saw. For instance, during the finale when the house blows up, it happens off screen, but they did actually film that explosion. However, they were forced to not show it, among other scenes, to keep the rating down. Apparently the studio hoped this would create a franchise, which never ended up happening, which was likely due to its disappointing box office returns. Despite making a profit, it wasn't enough to warrant a sequel. There was, however, a cancelled remake of the film which was going to be called Toymageddon, directed by Justin Lin of Fast and Furious fame, most notably Tokyo Drift. The film was cancelled in 2019 due to the Fox acquisition by Disney, and I'm kind of glad that didn't happen. As much as I love Lin's work, I just don't think it's very necessary, and the effects and soul that went into the original film are so specific to its time that any attempt to reboot it would likely be a blunder in my opinion. But that's just me. Have you seen Small Soldiers? If so, what do you think of it? If not, will you? And whether it's one about a miniature conflict or not. As always, keep watching movies.